Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for joining us with our Selling with Scale webinar. Let's just get right into it. While people are still kind of dialing on just before we begin, we'll just a couple of notes. All attendees will be muted during the webinar. It'll run for approximately 45 minutes, but we're trying to get some 15 minutes for questions afterwards. Feel free, though, to submit any questions you might have in the question panel throughout. There will be some on-screen polls just for fun. So you just use your mouse to kind of click and when they kind of show up throughout the webinar. Also, the webinar will be recorded, so it can be sent to you afterwards, as well as the slides. You'll be happy to know. We also have a surprise at the end for you guys for sticking around, just a bonus offer for the attendees at the end of the webinar. Okay, just to begin, just to meet the team, my name is Enda Hearn. I'm an inbound marketing specialist for WSI. We also have our digital strategist, Cormac Farley, with us, as well as Christine McMahon, who's dialing in from Toronto in Canada for our social selling expert.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
All right. Just a little bit about WSI really quick. We're a global marketing agency with 1,500 digital consultants throughout 80 countries. Ourselves here, we're kind of broadcasting from Dublin and Toronto, as mentioned before. We're about 20 years in the business, and as well as social selling, we deliver a range of marketing tactics for our clients. Yeah, and just to cover a few of the things that you'll learn throughout today. Basically, like crafting your LinkedIn profile to stand out from your competitors, identifying your ideal prospect, the nurture plan within LinkedIn, all the different tools so you can reach those professionals faster. We're going to talk about how you can be like a thought leader with some practical tips on content sharing. And also the most important thing maybe is to kind of leverage the relationships you have already on LinkedIn. So I'll just pass over to Cormac to get us started there.
Okay, thanks, Enda, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. So, you know, today, obviously, our conversation is focused really around how to use social tools, and particularly LinkedIn, for selling, and not only selling, but to sell with scale. So I think it's kind of important to understand how the B2B process has changed in terms of sales over the years, and you know, I guess, and looking at the kind of attendees on the call today, you know, there's a mix between marketing and sales professionals, and you know, generally it's always been kind of a long-standing debate, if you want to use that word, between marketing and sales as to whose responsibility it is to generate leads. And you know, the reality is that, you know, marketing teams typically produce between 15 and 30% of a company's leads, and that puts a lot of pressure on sales. And I'm sure a lot of people on the call today feel that pain in that, you know, the balance, like 70% of the lead generation activity for the organization falls on their shoulder. So I mean, in terms of the B2B buyer then, so what do we need to think about when you're trying to get into this lead generation activity? And in the past, when, you know, salespeople went out to generate that 70%, typically the introduction to the prospect would be much earlier in the selling process. So if you look at the diagram here, which is really like a timeline, you know, it would happen really much more over on this side, you know, where the buyer starts their due diligence rather than going online. The first protocol really would be to check out organizations in that space and really, you know, tap into their knowledge as opposed to online. The change now, of course, is that we're dealing with a very educated buyer who typically does a lot of the research themselves, and the time of first contact to the sales rep is way down the buying funnel. And, you know, I mean, in this chart here, you can see really as much as 70% down the buying journey before the first contact is made. So that's a very significant change and impacts how we need to approach this. So the other thing that's important to note, and this is a study that was put together by Forrester, the research company. So they went out and they interviewed several hundred business executives. And they asked the question, they said, when you're making a buying decision, so whether that's, like maybe some goods or some services or anything that's a significant decision for the organization, how do you do that? And what they say is that 65% of the time they will generally pick the company that helps them with the buying vision, because a lot of the time the goods and services that we're trying to sell, really the company has no understanding that they need it, right? So you think about companies like Kodak in the past in the photo business, would they have realized that their market share would really disappear because of the advent of the mobile phone, for example? So companies who approach this by helping to maybe challenge the status quo, identify new needs that an organization might have, and help define a solution, they are much more in line with the companies that they're approaching, and the conversation is differentiated. It's they're suddenly talking differently to these people, whereas, and this came out of the analysis by Forrester, was that the balance, in terms of when companies are making decisions, is what they call a bake-off. So this is where the company on their own have figured out they need a solution, and they're going out to the market to find it. And in this case, really they're looking at vendors who have capability. So the conversation is really around functionality, it's around benefits, and it's around price. And that's why it's a bake-off, because it's a commodity conversation. And the reality is it's not a great place to be. So if we look at our first chart, and we kind of said that this first conversation with the sales rep happens around 70% down the buying journey. The choice is that sales reps only join the conversation at that point, right? And they basically fight with everyone for the 30%, or and this is really, I suppose, the ethos behind this conversation, is the second choice is they put more effort, or we all put more effort into that first 70%. The competition is lower and there's little price friction. So it's an obvious place to start. So this brings up the point, now that we know that the buying journey has changed for B2B, this brings up the whole case of social selling. And the reality is that the B2B buyer has changed, as we've seen. Sales needs to proactively engage prospects on social channels. Social prospecting, it gives us a competitive advantage, and that's still the case, even though social selling has been around for a while. And we talked a little bit about maybe the ongoing debate between sales and marketing and who's responsible for leads. I think this social selling process helps sales and marketing get to be closer aligned, and it's more a unified message then that goes out from the organization. And then I suppose the final and one of the most important points is the return on investment. So, typically none of us makes decisions to do something unless we see that there's going to be an impact on the bottom line. And we put a lot of stock into SBI, they're the Sales Benchmark Index, and the quote at the bottom there is saying that sales professionals using social selling techniques realize 66% greater quota attainment than those using traditional prospecting means. So the reality is, there is a better case for ROI using these sort of techniques. And really, I love this quote from Jill Rowley. So Jill Rowley, she's a social selling evangelist. She looked to train something like 23,000 salespeople within the Oracle Corporation, and really, what in response to the point that 77% of B2B buyers said they did not talk with a salesperson until after they had performed independent research. In response to that, her point was, the modern consumer is digitally driven, socially connected, and mobile empowered. Sales reps need to adapt or be replaced. So it's a pretty hard statement, but there's definitely an element of truth in it. So I think, Enda, back to you. You wanted to conduct a quick poll to the audience at this point.
Yeah, sure. So as mentioned before, just kind of answer with your mouse in your own time, guys. We're going to run it probably for about the next 30 seconds. And yep, we're just asking, what is your main sales or marketing challenge when it comes to your marketing in general? Is it generating leads, building brand awareness, or defining a digital strategy? So we'll give you about 20 or 30 seconds there. Okay, see them coming in now. Excellent. Just wrapping now. Any last minute, guys? 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay. Okay, let's see how we did.
Interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, unsurprisingly, I think lead generation, because of I suppose given the subject of today's webinar, lead generation is something that it's something that we're all kind of thinking about here for LinkedIn, but it's not a landslide either. I mean, brand awareness and strategy as well is kind of top of mind with a lot of professionals these days that we deal with ourselves. I'll just pass it back now to Cormac.
Thanks, Enda, and thanks everyone for taking the time to do that. That's definitely interesting, but just want to make sure we're on the same page that generating leads is one of the key things. Okay, so really to wrap up this section, and I guess Christine and I are going to tag team a little bit in terms of covering off the material this morning. But now that we've looked at the case for social selling, we've looked at how these tools can be used to help with lead gen. What is it that we think you need to be thinking about? And so what we've done is we've built a kind of a 4-step process that takes us through this whole initiative. So the first step is really around establishing your professional brand, and that's kind of a critical step to start with. And they're kind of sequential in nature, these steps, because once we've built our professional brand, we then need to grow and leverage your network. And what we've found from experience is that sometimes people get stymied on step 2 because they're really not comfortable with how they've built out their profile, and it becomes a kind of catch-22 in that they're afraid to connect because they don't want to let people into their house because they're not happy with the way it is. But obviously that's a key part for this to work. You've got to connect with people, and we talk about how you do this with scale, and that's one of the points we're going to cover a little later. And then once you've built a community of people, you need to engage with them, and it's really about givers gain. It's about interacting, it's about being human, and Christine's going to cover a lot of this in her section. And then the final element, and I suppose this is where the ROI happens, is where we start business conversations, and this is where we put in some hard work to begin with, but then the benefit is the ROI conversation. So I think what we're going to do is pass over to Christine now to cover off step 1, which is really all about creating that professional brand.
Great, thanks, Cormac. That's a great little introduction there. So I feel like this section might seem a little basic, I guess, in terms of the way you might think about it, but really the power in this is in the fact that most people are probably going to start searching for you online, and they're going to research you, whether it's your company that you're working for or it's you as an individual. And often the first place people look is Google, and we'll see in a minute that becomes LinkedIn to LinkedIn, actually, pardon the pun. So if I can, oh, there we go, perfect. So I might click to my next slide. So it's really all about kind of building your professional brand. So I'm sure all of us can relate to the fact that you want to put your brand forward as sort of your main focus, but then also it's considering yourself as a brand. And when we talk about social selling, that is kind of how we look at ourselves, as a bit of your own personal professional brand. And LinkedIn really is the place where you can be visible and be professional. It's a lot more than just putting up your CV, which I think when we all probably got engaged on LinkedIn in the beginning, that's really all you did, is you just kind of looked at it like, oh, well, this is my CV online. And it's really changed over time. So, this is going to help us when we build our professional brand to, keep ourselves top of mind with clients, prospects, anybody else that leads that might be coming through your funnel, whether it's through your sales funnel, whether it's just through Google searches, whether it's just through engaging in conferences and things like that. So this is really where you want to build yourself up. So we're going to go through a few sort of key things that you can do, which really will have an impact on your profile. So when you're thinking about making your profile, I'm sure this is going to seem like a very sort of simple idea, but you'd be surprised when you start combing through LinkedIn how many profiles you see that just have that little, icon that's representing the photo. And so one of the first things that we say that's a really quick win is to update your profile picture. I think a lot of people get intimidated by it and they say, oh, this is LinkedIn. This is for my business. I don't want to be all social and I don't want to be like Facebook. But I think it's really important to understand that LinkedIn is not Facebook. It's not about putting up a picture of your family on vacation. It's about really just selling yourself. So you're putting your best foot forward. And when people are looking through LinkedIn, imagine walking through a crowd and you wanting to kind of find yourself people that you can relate to and or have a sales conversation with, and really putting your face forward is the first and foremost thing that you can do. So changing that little icon is a really quick win. And thinking about your photo, you really just want to make sure that it's professional looking and that it's not like you on vacation. That's kind of the two key points there. The next thing that people look at is just underneath your picture, you've got your name, obviously, and then underneath that, the bolded text, which is considered the headline. So this is, again, when people are searching you and they search either in Google or in LinkedIn, you can see a list of people that come up. And the first thing they see is your picture, your name, and then a little headline. And so there's little like tips and tricks that you can do in your headline to make it stand out from everybody else. So there's a few things that you need to be considering here. I mean, this is something that's going to represent you and what you are and who you are on LinkedIn. So in my case, you can see I've got myself listed as digital marketing strategist and consultant, social media planner, social selling instructor, and digital media expert. And you can add these little icons in there. There's little fun, as I said, sort of tips and tricks to make you kind of stand out more. So what I'm telling people is exactly what it is that I do. So right off the bat, you're seeing a list of people and it's very clear, oh, that's Christine and this is what she does. So your headline is sort of your next line of fire in terms of, how you're representing yourself in LinkedIn. And then another super easy quick win, if you haven't found this one, is, when you're building your profile, you can edit your profile and actually make your own LinkedIn personal URL. So normally when you just create a profile and you don't change this, it defaults to just a number. And I think we all can feel comfortable in the fact that we're not just a number. So adding your name to the end of this, really makes it look like you're very professional. You know what you're doing. You're out there and you're putting your best foot forward. And also, it kind of makes it easier for people to find you as well. Like you might forget maybe their last name, or it's just an easier way for people to search for you. So and it looks good on a business card, I think, is another good point. So we just threw in an example here in terms of headlines for perhaps a software sales professional. So something you could put underneath your name is, helping Irish businesses manage their CRM. I'm providing fintech solutions to global financial companies, creating smart solutions for marketing teams. I mean, you can develop these in any way you want and be creative, but the point is you just want to share what it is that you do. So it's that next little bit of information so people aren't having to comb through all of your different profile sections. And then we move on to the summary. So, you've got your picture, everybody's seen you, they know your name, they see what you are and what you do in sort of top line information. And then if they've now said, I'm interested in this person, I want to know a little bit more, you come to the summary. So the summary section is truncated. It's shrunk up, and then you have to click to show more. So really, this is sort of the secondary bit of information that you're going to be putting in there. But when people are looking for information on you, it's very helpful to kind of follow through and think about the people you want to reach, your target audience, what they want to know about you, and how you want to make people feel when they're reading through your profile. Again, this might seem like kind of basic information, but it's that step further from a CV. It's really trying to make it clear what it is you do and how you help people, and that's really going to help bring it home, I think, what it is you're trying to accomplish on LinkedIn. So again, these are all kind of basic things, but it's really that first step to kind of setting yourself up for a good, successful social selling atmosphere on LinkedIn. So if you look at myself as an example, you can see through what I have as my summary, where I talk about, business owners, managers. So I'm speaking directly to the people that are going to be reading and engaging with my content. I'm helping people reach their digital marketing goals. Talk a little bit about your company. So, when you partner with WSI, et cetera, et cetera. Throw in a quote maybe from clients that you've worked with. These are all really great little things that you can do that kind of just puts you a little bit at the forefront when people are looking through LinkedIn, and in particular trying to engage and connect with other people on there when it comes to social selling. So this is going to really sort of set a good solid foundation as you move into the next steps, which I think Cormac's going to follow in through in a second, which is being connected.
Okay, absolutely. So yeah, it's amazing. Thanks, Christine. I mean, I think it's amazing how that first step can be a stumbling block, and I think while we definitely want to make this not a CV and make it really around what it is that we can do to help people. I mean, they're great points. At the bottom line as well is that we don't want to get stymied by it. You just need to get it done and move on, because nothing great happens until you've got a decent sized community. And that's just some of the issues, I think, with LinkedIn. Unless you've got a decent size to your community, it's hard to make it work. So this next step is kind of around how do you go ahead and grow your network. And I think everyone's probably quite familiar with how LinkedIn works in terms of the different levels, so obviously there's, it starts with you and your immediate connections. So they're first degree connections. And then it windows into the second degree connections, which are connected to your first degree, and then finally into your third degree, which are, slightly more separated. Okay. So the idea is that we want to obviously try and put together a strategy for making sure that we expand this network. Just before I move on, I mean, I should point out that, it gets bigger and bigger, obviously, as LinkedIn grows, and now that it's part of Microsoft, that's even more the case. But really, it's a good way to think of LinkedIn is that it's the world's largest database of business professionals, and it's got really, really powerful search capability to help you window into that community. In terms of how you should use LinkedIn, it's important to kind of set some ground rules on it. So of course you want to make connections, but you want to make sure that once you've made them, that you maintain them. So, we've all seen, this kind of scenario whereby somebody connects with you, and the first thing they do is an ask. They say, "Can I go meet you?" And it's very, very off-putting. So you've got to think in your head around giver's gain. It's around being genuinely helpful and not being salesy. That comes at the end of the process when you've built up the right, I suppose, to go and through being helpful, see if that can expand into a business conversation. But it shouldn't be the first thing you do. I think Christine made some really good points about that this is not Facebook, for sure. But at the same breath, you need to be human. I think sometimes we start doing the techno speak, and we start using very kind of convoluted language on LinkedIn. And I think you need to be yourself, right? And being human is obviously part of that. So not Facebook, but you definitely need to have a personal touch on it. And then it's a great place to listen for opportunities. So how do you expand that network? Well, the obvious starting place is to connect with friends, and the thing to remember here is that there are people already within your very personal network who are in business and have maybe a set of connections that you'd very much like to reach out to. So you can be choosy here, but it's a good starting point. And the next one really is about connecting with your clients. And if there was one kind of takeaway from today's session, I'd encourage everyone to check after this webinar that you are connected to all of your customers and clients, because the reality is they will introduce you to your next prospects. If you're doing a good job for your existing clients and customers, well, then it just stands to reason that their community of business associates would be interested in talking to you as well. So it's amazing how, and I've been guilty of it myself over the years, where you suddenly realize a couple of years later you've been doing business with someone and actually you're not connected with them on LinkedIn. So that's crazy, right? So that's kind of a first step. And another little kind of for people who, because it's not all about online, it's also about offline, and networking is a huge thing anyway in business. So, if you're going to like an event or a trade show or something like that, there's a good opportunity to connect with like-minded people who are also at the event. And this is a feature that a lot of people are not aware of, but when you go in on, this is done via your mobile device because you're mobile, you're out and about at the event. But if you go in and look down here at your connections within the mobile app for LinkedIn, there's an option at the top that says Find Nearby. And by turning that on, anyone who is also using this feature within the event will pop up beside you. And it's a good kind of conversation starter, but also a good opportunity to grow your network with people who are obviously like-minded. So the conversation then needs to, so they're the kind of the quick wins, right? So, you got your friends, you got your customers, and maybe if you're attending events and so on and so forth. But then you need a strategy. You need to think, well, what does my network look like right now and how should it look? So to give you an example, I'm using our agency as a case study. So we're a digital marketing agency, right? And for us, we're thinking about who are the centers of influence that we would like to connect with. So the first thing is that we would like to connect with marketers. Okay, so we want to share ideas with them, we want to help them, we want to learn from them. Okay, so that's our kind of first bucket. The second bucket is marketing consultants. So these we don't consider to be competitors. These are people who have clients who have issues that need to get solved, and again, it can be a space that we can offer help with. So that's a group of people who we would like to be connected to. We kind of have a view that we do a lot of strategy work within our agency. So being connected to C-level execs is important. It's not the only thing, but it's something that we manage and we monitor. And then the final thing is social influencers. So I think the problem with LinkedIn can be, and this goes into the scale conversation, is that I'm all for niche and I'm all for being specific, but I think sometimes we narrow our interests to such a small group that our conversation is not being heard by enough people. So, in our space, for example, there's a number of people that we're connected to through our global network. So Dave Gerhardt is one who started the whole concept of conversational marketing. Rand Fishkin might be another. And by connecting ourselves with them and making sure that we're following them and, interacting with them, I suppose, that in turn gets our messages and amplifies them through that social influence. So I definitely encourage, and every niche that we've come across has a set of influencers. So if you're a software company in the database space, no doubt there's a leading light in that space. So get to know them, connect with them, and they're often only too happy to help share your messaging. Okay, so I think this is always the dangerous part of a webinar where you try and do things live. But I think, Enda, we're going to try and go out to LinkedIn and just do a live demo on this part. So maybe if you could just...
Sure. I'll just give you control.
That'd be great.
Sure. UK.
All righty. So all right. So maybe, Enda, you just let me know if my screen is showing.
Yeah, looks good. Yeah.
All righty, good. So I'm looking at LinkedIn, and I'm using Sales Navigator, which is now that's a subscription-based product that LinkedIn sell. I use it because we do a lot of work in LinkedIn, but you can do a lot of this activity on the free version as well. So the first thing with kind of looking to set a strategy for who you should connect with is to look for accounts. So I'm going to kind of look at this kind of backwards. I'm going to say, well, let's say you were a software company and you were trying to target companies like us. So in fairness, I'm the buyer, right? And you're trying to target, agencies like us. First of all, you need to, at least do a sanity check to see how many different accounts would be in that space, right? So, as I said, LinkedIn is a very, very powerful database. So I'm going to just look at, let's say, for example, I'm going to put in Ireland here, and I'm going to put in the United Kingdom. Okay. And then for industries, I'm going to say marketing. And you can see at the top, as I start putting in these criteria, LinkedIn starts limiting the numbers that I'm working with. And what I might say here is, okay, I'm interested in companies in this space in marketing who have somehow in their profile indicated that they are an agency. Okay, so I'm hoping this will return some results. Okay, so this is found within LinkedIn 7,921 companies, because we're at an account level here, that fit that bill of being in Ireland and the UK, being in the marketing space, and being indicated as an agency. Okay, so that's the first thing to look for. The second thing then, and I think this is where it gets more interesting, is when we start looking for people, because obviously, as Christine said, that's what this is all about. It's all around connecting with people, and it's about making connections. So if I turn this around a little bit and I say, well, I want to look for leads, okay, so this is the people section. And what I'm actually going to do is just maybe to make this a little bit quicker is I have a saved search in here, which has all of the criteria built in. So right now, again, I'm looking for the criteria of agency. I'm looking for Ireland and the UK. I've specified that I want second degree connections. We covered that off earlier on. So obviously first degree I'm already connected to, but second is my next sphere of influence. So I said, okay, I'd like to see those. And then it presents to me a list of people, I guess, that I may be interested in connecting with. So, let's say there's Colin Tierney. He's a second degree connection. He's managing director at the Yum Creative Agency. And first thing is I can look at and see, well, who do I share connections with? And I can see, Dennis Hegarty. He's a colleague of mine. He's down in Wexford. So I can actually go straight ahead and message Dennis. It opens up the messaging window, and I can actually type to him straight away and ask if he would mind connecting me with Colin. So, I think that is that just kind of shows you the power of how you make the connection. The challenge is, and I might end up just kind of fast forward now to avoid the swapping of the screens, is just kind of cover off how we might do this with scale. Because obviously I can go and identify all the people that I want to connect with, but sometimes just getting that connection made takes a lot of time to do it this way. So, I'd like to kind of introduce you to a couple of tools that we use. And I think that the backdrop of this is to just be really, really clear that this cannot be an automated process. LinkedIn works because it's one-to-one, it's human, and you're making a genuine connection with someone. But the software tool just helps to make sure that you can scale that a little bit. So one of the tools that we use is a product called Leonard. And what it does is it's a Chrome plugin that actually bolts itself on to, I'll just hover over it here, it's called Meet Leonard. It kind of bolts itself on to LinkedIn, and it does this for the free version as well. But for those of you who are familiar with Navigator, you'll see that there's a little bar here that you normally don't get within Navigator. And what this allows you to do is, look, I've got my 10,000 people here. Usually what you do is you narrow down the criteria until you're very, very sure that these truly are people that you want to connect with. And then literally what you do is you go through them and you just tick them all off, right? And you can skip them, you can do all that sort of stuff. But basically what Leonard allows you to do is to go ahead and make a connection, okay? And it allows you to put in a custom invitation message that's specific to this particular group of people that you're looking to reach out to. And it just helps you with little things, because usually when someone connects with you, you want to get back to them right away and thank them for the connection, but sometimes you don't put much more thought into it than that anyway. So this just helps you give a nice little follow-up message once they do connect, and you can set, now we like to keep this at a manageable level, so you don't want to go crazy with it, but you can connect with up to 200 profiles kind of on one particular sitting like this. But what we find is that it really helps just to kind of scale that whole LinkedIn conversation. So and I think what we might do is swap back to the slides, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. If you give us back control, we'll keep it moving.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Bear with me a second.
So we're just about 12:35 now, so we've got 2 sections left, and then hopefully we'll have the questions after, just for a time to keep there.
I think I'm being technically challenged here, and I think you might be able to do that yourself. You just want to right-click on your name and take back the controls.
Oh, I see, yeah. Sure. There it is. And I think we're back to the slides here.
Brilliant, okay. Okay, good. So I think I'm on here again.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've made some of these points already. I just fast forwarded because I was actually in LinkedIn. It was easier to do it then. So,
sure.
So Sales Navigator, as I said, I think it's a hugely powerful tool, but it is expensive, right? So what I'd suggest to people is go with the free version first, try all these things out, and then if you're in that connection mode and you've built up your profile, then go and consider Navigator. Okay, we've gone through that process of requesting an introduction, and I've fast forwarded on the scaling. So this is where I talked about Leonard, and I think that might be one of the surprises for later on, but I don't want to give too much away now at this point.
Sure.
Okay, so over to Christine then, who's going to talk about, now that we've got those connections, how do we go and engage with that community?
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so hopping right in here. So when we start to think about the content that we're sharing and sort of why, I guess, is, I think Cormac's made this point a few times as well, is that you're really trying to position yourself as an expert in whatever field that it is that you're in, or vertical that you're in. And we find that you can do that in two ways. You can sort of leverage content that's already out there, or you can sort of share educational content. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But basically, I think that the research is showing that people really want to work with someone who's seen as an expert. So what we're trying to do here is position yourself as one. And LinkedIn is a great place to do that. As we know, it's full of business like-minded folks, and as Cormac has just made the point, you can refine your searches and find people specific to what you're talking about as well. So now we're talking about how do we kind of get ourselves into the conversation in LinkedIn. So just clicking through here. So why we're publishing content is obviously to position yourself as an expert, but what we're looking for when we're looking around LinkedIn and when you're combing through, the database that is LinkedIn, you're looking for what we like to call triggers. Part of what we're going to be talking about when we say, what kind of content that we're going to be sharing is we're gonna look for reasons to start a conversation with either your connections or your second degree connections who can all see your content in the feeds. So when somebody starts to like your content, that's sort of the lowest level of engagement on content that's shared in LinkedIn, but it still has value and you still see people that are liking your content. So it's a good sort of trigger to keep your eyes open for. But really the power comes from the shares and the comments on the content. So this could be your own content. It could be content that you're commenting on and it starts a conversation. So again, it's just sort of making yourself part of the conversation and putting your own strategic thought into it. It can often position yourself and help to position yourself at the forefront of that discussion and therefore be seen as sort of an expert in that field. So what kind of content should you be publishing or sharing? This is kind of where we were saying we would walk through a little bit of this. There's no wrong answer. I think often you ask yourself all these questions, when, who, what, how, where, why, and those are really the questions that your prospects are asking. So what you're trying to do is position content that answers those questions. I think we've already shown you a couple of little tools, and here's another one that we like to use. There's actually a really cool website if you want to start doing this and you want to start sharing content, is answerthepublic.com, where you can see this kind of scary looking dude in a pullover. But it's actually a really cool and powerful tool because you can actually start to search and comb the internet, the vast internet, and get very specific on topics and or the questions that your prospects might be asking. So I think if I click through to the next slide here, we can look at the example of, let's say, CRM software. I know I keep picking on software, but it's just for the sake of articulating how it works. It's a good example. So if you look at this as an industry, and I might just progress here past the questions, we can get to how the tool works. So you basically just type in the industry. So in this case, it's CRM software, and you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's that little man there, and CRM software is in the center of it. And then what it does is it actually pushes out those questions that we talked about before, like what are people searching for in relation to CRM software? What is the conversation that's going on the net, right? So looking at the how, the when, the are, the what, and then if you look at the outer part of the wheel, it's actually showing you questions that people are searching. So you can see it under the how, how to create CRM software, how to build CRM software, how to develop CRM software. Looking at the what, you can see what is CRM software on a very basic level. So it goes through, and there's a plethora of questions that get asked out there. And then what this does is you can actually click on each of these. This is a free tool. So it's sort of the power of little tools that you can find that help to scale this type of effort, right? And get it down to maybe just like 5-10 minutes a day. But you can actually click on this, and then it'll take you to the actual Google searches, and it'll bring up articles that are relating back to that topic. So if it's what's the best CRM examples in the hotel industry, you can see this one in the Google field there. It'll then give you a listing of blog content that's found on the web. And then you can kind of scale through that and have a look and see if something speaks to you, something that maybe you have an opinion on. And then what you can do is you can share directly from there and go and share it on your own network. So it's making the conversation easier for yourself to be able to publish and position yourself in a particular way. So let's say this article that's picked here, everything you need to know about hotel CRM software, and you're saying, I've got a very particular viewpoint on this, or maybe you have something that would help someone in this field and you want to position that. This is a great piece of content for you to push out there. So that's a quick and easy way for you to start building content. So that's when you're curating kind of your own content. You can share content that's out there. You don't have to always draft your own or create your own blogs. I think often people think or have the misconception that it's all about you publishing your own articles and content. It's not always the case. You can simply find and navigate content that's already out there and just get part of that conversation. So that can be done by either publishing it on your page. You can also share information on LinkedIn, and that's where a lot of the power comes from. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it could just be commenting on something you're already seeing on LinkedIn. So some easy kind of ways that you can push content out there. And then kind of a key little, I guess, tip is that after you share that content, you'll see your post within your profile, and you can go into there and you can actually see the analytics on it. And that little screen grab on the right there is some analytics from a post, and you can see very clearly the types of people that you're reaching and who is seeing your content. And what that tells you is, yes, I'm targeting the right people, or the right people are seeing my messages. If those people are not who you want to be talking to, then you're going to have to sort of shift your focus. And obviously you're not answering the questions that they're asking on LinkedIn. So it's a great little, sort of tip. Don't just post and forget it. Be engaged with your posts, comment back, start a conversation within your posts, and then also have a look at the back end analytics after you post those things. So yeah, as I mentioned, you want to engage in those conversations. Oftentimes you'll find people ask some really great questions, and you never know where a business engagement can start. And often it can start from simply asking questions on your content. So be sure to keep paying attention to what's going on in your posting content as well.
Okay, thanks, Christine. That's perfect. I'm just going to run another poll now, guys, just the second of the two. And I'm asking just how frequently would you post content, original or third party, that you're sharing on LinkedIn? Would it be not often at all, maybe like once a month, quite often, once a week, or very often, as in around once a day? Like, these are quite loose, but whatever kind of suits yourself. Then yeah, see them kind of coming in there. Just going to give you another 10 seconds or so. Oh, we got some real dedicated posters coming through as well. It's probably unlike myself. Okay, that's it. Gonna share. I think Christine, yourself now, you would share quite a bit. I kind of see that.
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of a once a day, kind of around that kind of area yourself.
Yeah, it's become part of my daily routine, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Check-in.
it's funny how the poll went. It's kind of lopsided between very or not so much at all, because that's kind of me. Like, I mean, if you're running a project or you're trying to really kind of get something noticed and everything like that, you're probably kind of ramp it up to once a day. But you got to kind of keep that up, because admittedly myself, I can go a couple of weeks without posting anything meaningful. So yeah, it's that's something that we try to kind of keep up with ourselves, like, and practice. So that's excellent to kind of see that people are that dedicated, some of them, and also it's quite normal to see that some of them are they'd like to improve as well. So I'll just go back to the slides now. I think I'm passing back to Cormac.
Yeah, I think it's me for the fourth of our four-step process, and interesting. So thanks everyone for voting on that. I mean, I'm intrigued by the results, and I've been reading a lot recently. People tend to like to come out with rules, as in, I should post, 1.4 times a day and things like that,
Yeah.
And people worry about it being too much. The reality is, if you go by the rule that you're trying to add value and that you're posting meaningful information, there's no too much, because you're dealing with people who are online at different times of the day. The news feed, as we know, is a very competitive space. So you're literally on this giant scroll, and I really don't hold to the argument that posting you can post too much and become annoying. I don't think that that's really ever the case. Of course, it does have to be quality. But, so thanks for the input on the poll. Appreciate that. So I guess we've spoken a little bit about why we all need to think about this, and in terms of the processes, we've talked about the importance of having a very a very credible and professional profile. how we need to connect in with our communities. And once we've made our connections, then to how Christine kind of walked us through, how we engage and how we kind of put ourselves out there, I suppose, a little bit with LinkedIn. And ultimately, it's important to remember that we're kind of part of a community. I mean, LinkedIn themselves, when you look at their strategic approach, is they want people to engage. And, we've seen a lot of activity recently where, even if you're sharing things like YouTube videos, for example, sharing a YouTube link is not a good idea. You want to share natively on the platform. LinkedIn want to keep you there. They do not want to push you out. And in fairness, there's an argument that's coming up now that really they don't like so much when you're pushing your third-party content out to other sites. It's good to take the sound bites and put them within the post itself. So this thing is evolving all the time, but the reality is that it's about building solid relations and it's about starting conversations. So just like we got paralyzed by not having our profile built, we often get paralyzed by not, I suppose, starting conversations, right? Because we're afraid we're not going to say the right thing. And I think we need to do that, but it can't be always about you. So the little note at the bottom is be nice and start conversations. And LinkedIn gives us a lot of things. If you go into your general updates section, your notification section within the platform, you'll get little things like, congratulating someone because they've been at a company for a certain number of years, right down to happy birthday. I'd encourage people not to do the lazy response that LinkedIn offers, you just go happy birthdays, is put a little bit of thought into something behind it, right? But if somebody has come up with a good article or something like that, give them a little bit of kudos. And again, that means, and if you try this, you'll see it. If you start doing that with individuals, they will then come back and start engaging with your content as well, and that's when great things happen. Kind of conscious of the time now, so I'm going to wrap really quickly on this. But I mean, a big part of LinkedIn, again, we talked about the giver's gain, is giving recommendations. So if once you start giving recommendations, you start getting them back. So again, it's another part of being engaged, and there's a little bit of there are some tactics that you can consider to this, but we've kind of experimented with using word clouds. So if you actually look at an individual who's already got lots of recommendations on their page, if you go and put some of those into a word cloud, you'll see what the kind of key things are that are coming out about that individual, in terms of vision, ability, things like that, which you can take into consideration when writing the recommendation. And another takeaway, and something I'd encourage everyone, because everyone needs a starting point, right, is I'd encourage you to start today by figuring out what LinkedIn thinks your social influence is, right? And this is a section within LinkedIn where it'll give you a social selling dashboard, and it'll give you a rating out of 100 in terms of what they think your social influence is. So, they'll rate you on establishing your professional brand, your ability to find the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. So it's an interesting one to start with, and then as you start doing all of the best practices, you should see that number start to improve, and at least you're going in the right direction. So the final summary, and I'm going to pass back to Enda for the wrap up, is, so what do you do kind of after this call? What are the things that you should be thinking about? So it's really about making sure that you're at your best. Go ahead and put a little bit of work into getting your profile together. If it's a resume right now, change it and make it more about what it is, the value that you offer. Start connecting. So figure out and put a little bit of strategy behind who it is you should be connecting with, and then start doing that. Even if you don't use tools like Leonard, even connecting, making a goal to connect with 5 or 10 people a day, a month later, you suddenly have, maybe 100 people extra that you're connected with. So I'd encourage you to do that. Start sharing content that's adding value, and then be part of the community. That's what LinkedIn wants, and that's where the great things come from in terms of starting business conversations. So I think it's back to you, Enda.
Okay, thanks, Cormac, and thanks, Christine, as well. That was some really great stuff. And yeah, as mentioned, we're a little tight for time, so I'll be a little brief on our wrap up here. So basically, yeah, as promised earlier, there was just a little surprise and a thank you really for everyone kind of coming on. We have the first 10 applicants, 10 places now will be able to get like a free LinkedIn assessment. It's run by ourselves here. Basically, we're going to look at your profile. We're going to give you tips about your own layout and your own, from profile pics to recommendations, and how everything kind of falls in together. I've had this done with my own profile, and I swore that like, oh no, I'll be fine, they won't find anything, but there was like a couple of things there that we're able to boost. And we also do this based on your own goals as well. You can see what Christine's one in the GIF there, that she's kind of she calls out like all her skills and everything like that. But if you're targeting an industry and things like that, we kind of keep that in mind when we kind of deliver the tips, and we deliver it in a way of like kind of a good, really handy and concise video that you can just kind of go on and help. So the first 10 guys, I want you to do is I want you to kind of open up the questions bar. You'll see that in your go-to panel there. If you haven't got the panel open, you can hit the orange arrow, that'll open it right up. Navigate down to the questions, and then just put in your name and your company, and that's it. And then we'll pick the fastest 10, and I'll go out with you, and I'm sure you'll get really good value with this yourself. So I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds.
Yeah, this will be a great start to getting over that first part of the process.
Yeah,
if you had any reservations, we'll help you.
Yeah, and like you could have like, there is no perfect profile, but as mentioned before, whatever your goals are or anything like that, that's what we kind of keep in mind when we help clients, just kind of positioning themselves at LinkedIn. So that's good. Just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And okay, so yeah, excellent. And also, I'm going to run this one as well. As Cormac mentioned, Leonard for LinkedIn, now at the moment it's actually, it used to be free to try, but now it's paid only. So we're giving away a 6-month subscription. It's worth $99. It gives you all those great tools that you saw Cormac before, with regards to Leonard as well. And it'll let you kind of really, as Christine said, like get started kind of gaining prospects on LinkedIn and just kind of selling with scale. So again, yeah, if you just type into the question box your name and your company, and we'll just make sure that we'll get to everything, and we'll message the lucky winner shortly after the webinar, I think.
And this helps you with the second part of the process of making connections.
Connections, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think it's worth pointing out, we don't have any tie-in necessarily to Leonard. So we were enjoying it very much when it was a free tool, but they've literally, obviously there's a lot of value there, so they've started to charge for it. So
yeah, like it's excellent. It's it really kind of helps you meet your goals through LinkedIn and everything. So yeah, we've got about 5 minutes left, and we'll be able to take a question or two. Just kind of here, I'm just going all the way back up past these. Yeah, Maria's asking, how do you make LinkedIn work for sales teams together as a team, I guess? Is that yourself, Cormac?
I'm happy to take a stab at that. I mean, yeah, I think one of the challenges, and we've had this internally ourselves as an agency, is LinkedIn, because of its nature, is very personal to you as a professional. So it's the sort of thing that you take with you throughout your career, right? So you might start at company A and you go to company B, but your LinkedIn profile is really yours, right, as an individual. But if everybody in the company does something different, it's hard to get kind of scale and meaningful results out of it. So I think part of the strategy, especially if there is a sales team and there's an environment like that, is to have the sales people working together. I mean, for sure, LinkedIn has an algorithm which kind of dictates whether your material gets pushed to the top of the feed or not. So we talk about this thing called a pod activity. So if your sales team are one of your salespeople are starting to post some information out, if the rest of the sales team get behind that and start interacting with it, that gives the post just that initial little bit of something to get it out there, and LinkedIn start looking, oh, this has got some activity going on. So what it does is it kind of just starts that ball rolling in terms of engagement, and then that's much easier then for other people to start engaging and adding their comments and things in. So I think two things, Enda, really on that is one is making sure that you kind of operate as a team, and then secondly is to have some sort of a content strategy between the team as to how this information is going to go up there.
And I might just throw in just a little quick win as well, as if you're a big enough sales team with a strong brand, and let's say you have a company page, it's making sure that all of the people on your sales team are connected to the company, because oftentimes you can search for the company and all your team will be listed there. So it's visibility as well to make sure that everybody knows, oh, you're all part of that same team.
Yeah, good point. It's like a validator almost that, you know, you're, yeah.
It's quick win.
Sure, brilliant. Yeah, I'll just try to pick one more, just a really quick one is basically, I think Cormac mentioned the SSI score earlier, where you start to kind of see how you're doing with LinkedIn and the different headings and what your score there. They were asking, where exactly do you find that? Is it within LinkedIn or you guys?
You can actually just Google what's my social selling index, and it'll be the top thing that comes up there.
Sure.
It is connected directly to your LinkedIn profile, so you have to be logged in for it to work its magic. But yeah, the quickest, easiest way to do it is Google it.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I know there's a ton of questions there, but I'll personally come back out with those after the webinar. I know we're at the top of the hour now. We're just gone 1 o'clock. So yeah, I'll thank everyone for attending, and I'll thank Cormac and Christine as well for like a really great webinar there. And I know we'll be running a couple of these in the future, so hopefully we can give you some more tips again.
Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.